Welcome to the Center for U.S. War Veterans Oral Histories at the National Guard Militia Museum of New Jersey in Seagirt, a partner of the Library of Congress's Veterans History Project. Today is February 17th, 2016. I am Carol Fowler, Director of the Center. My honored veteran is John A. Robinson, who served with the United States Naval Reserve Fleet Marine Force in the Vietnam War. He served from January of 1966 until January of 1968 and worked as a hospital corpsman. He was with the 1st Marine Division, 1st Battalion, Delta Company, 1st Platoon. Thank you for wanting to be here today, John. Your eyewitness account is considered a primary historical source and a valuable addition to our Veterans History Project here at the museum. Good morning, John, and welcome.
Good morning, Carol. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. You heard about the project from your Vietnam veteran interviewee friend, Bill Wallace.
That's correct.
Okay. And did you want to say how you felt about Vietnam up until then, or how you just found your dog tags today, you said?
I did. I found my dog tags today. I thought I would put them on. I came home from Vietnam with a lot of tragic memories that I tried to repress by immersing myself in college and sports, and tried not to think too much about the deaths and the wounded people and the tragedies that I experienced. So it's kind of how I've handled it throughout my lifetime, and really haven't thought too much about it until recently when I was invited to speak and have this interview. And then I started jotting down some memories that came forth, and I can practically remember the name of everybody in my platoon. In one letter to my mother, I expressed that out of 40 guys in my platoon, I was one of only 5 that were left that wasn't either killed or wounded, and we had 35 new guys, inexperienced guys, and I was didn't feel quite as safe with the new guys. And in fact, I said in this letter to my mother that they actually came to me, the corpsmen, for advice on what to do when we were in battle, and I had to help the lieutenant and the sergeant read the maps, and I was familiar with the area and they were not, so I had to call in the medevac choppers and do things that normally a corpsman wouldn't do, that normally the battalion or the platoon leader would do, until they got experienced. But they became experienced and great guys to serve with. I don't know, every day was a new experience in Vietnam.
Absolutely. Did anybody in your family serve in the military before you?
Yes. I didn't mention my grandfather. My mother's father was in the Marine Corps and served in the First World War in France and was severely wounded on a few occasions and gassed. I have an uncle, James Duddy, my mother's brother, who served on Iwo Jima, and he was actually the soldier that took down the Japanese flag before the American flag was raised on the top of Iwo Jima. I was always very proud of that. I believe that's on record in the Library of Congress. And my father served in the Navy on the USS Missouri during the Second World War, and the USS Missouri was actually the ship where the treaty was signed with
MacArthur?
General MacArthur and President Truman and the President of Japan.
What an interesting legacy, military legacy.
Thank you.
Oh. How did you come to be in the service?
My dad had a friend that was a lieutenant commander at Lakehurst Naval Station, and he encouraged me to join the reserves to help offset the cost of my education at Rutgers. And when I was a senior in high school, I joined the Naval Reserve at Lakehurst Naval Station, and since I was studying pre-med, they assigned me to the hospital, and I became a corpsman recruit. I didn't realize that corpsmen were a scarce commodity in times of war and were transferred to the Marine Corps until I was activated after my freshman year and sent to Great Lakes Naval Training Station for corpsman training.
Hold
And
on, could you tell me, does that mean you enlisted or were drafted?
I enlisted in the Naval Reserve,
Right.
but from the Naval Reserve I was activated to active duty.
So that's not the same as drafted?
That's correct.
Okay.
I enlisted, but I was activated
Okay.
from my reserve unit.
It's like you were deployed.
Correct.
Okay. So you went to Naval Hospital Corps School at Great Lakes,
That's correct.
Illinois.
And I'm proud to say I graduated first in my class.
Congratulations.
And there were many college graduates in that class, and I had only served 1 year of college, so I was very proud of that.
It's amazing. You're like a prodigy.
Well, there's another unusual thing. Everybody that enters the service takes a test called a GCT-ARI test, and that's a math and grammar kind of test. It's like a, I don't know if it's like a college prep test or a college board test, but I took that in my senior year of high school, and I went to Manasquan High School, and I had great teachers, and I did very well at Manasquan, and I scored out of a possible, I think 145 or 150 is the highest score in that test. I scored a 144. And the captain at Lakehurst was quite amazed at my score. And the officer that gave the test also brought me in his room and said, "Do you realize you scored a 144 in this test? I've never seen such a high score."
Wow.
And wherever I went, they would look at my records and remark about how highly I scored, but I attribute that to the great teachers I had.
Right.
And I was able to remember things very well.
Oh, that's good. What kind of adjustment was it for you at Great Lakes? That's kind of like the boot camp for the Navy.
Correct. I took it as a challenge. It was an adjustment being away from home and away from my 4 younger brothers and sisters, especially since my mom and dad had divorced and I was kind of the man of the house. I was the oldest of 5 children. And it was tough being away from them, but I adjusted very well. I had my Red Cross life-saving certificate, so my duty, instead of washing dishes or KP duty, was always being a lifeguard at the swimming pool. And I was able to swim a lot myself, and I used the gym facilities quite often. So I was never bored. I embraced athletics, and I studied hard and graduated first in my class. So I just took Great Lakes as a challenge, that's all.
Did you have to save anyone in the pool?
No,
Oh, okay.
not in that pool.
Not enough.
As a lifeguard, I did a number of times, yes.
Were you a lifeguard at home too?
I was a lifeguard here in Deal.
In the ocean?
Yes, ocean and a beach club and a swimming pool.
Oh, okay.
Saved a couple of small children and one older gentleman from the ocean.
Wow.
I actually saved a classmate too when we were on our class trip in Island Beach State Park.
Oh.
Had been carried out to sea by an undertow and was floundering, and I was able to swim out and save him.
Wow. You're so brave.
Just react to the situation.
Mhm.
Bravery.
Oh, goodness. All right, so after Great Lakes, where'd you go?
After Great Lakes, I was stationed at Portsmouth Naval Hospital.
Virginia?
And at Portsmouth Naval Hospital, again, my high score in that GCT helped me because the admiral at the base said, "I see that you graduated first in your class and you have a very high GCT-ARI. What would you like to do at this hospital?" And he suggested that I go into a ward, and I went into the urology ward. And after 6 months, I earned my urology technician and operating room technician certificate. So it was like further schooling. I was also appointed to a task force for 20 days. I was one of 9 corpsmen appointed to a task force to set up a combat medical surgical team on a ship, the USS Raleigh, and we sailed down to Puerto Rico for 20 days, and we did an amphibious assault on Puerto Rico, and we set up a temporary hospital on the beach. And this was all filmed and was used as a training film for the Navy and the Marine Corps.
So you never left the ship to go on into Puerto Rico? You just stayed aboard, or?
No, I left the ship and
Oh,
set
okay.
up a surgical unit on the beach.
Oh, okay. Do you know where in Puerto Rico that was?
That was Vieques Island. And then afterwards, we were sent to San Juan Naval Base for the remaining 10 days.
Have you ever gone back there?
I'm going back to San Juan, yes.
Is that really historic there?
Very beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful island.
Did you go to NRMC Balboa in San Diego?
That's where I was deployed
Out of?
out of the country to go to Vietnam. Yes. When I got back from this training exercise, I got deployed to, actually transferred to the Fleet Marine Force, and was told to report to San Diego, and from there I went to Vietnam.
I read that corpsmen are frequently the only medical caregiver available in fleet or marine units on extended deployment. They also serve as battlefield corpsmen with the Marine Corps, rendering emergency medical treatment to include initial treatment in a combat environment.
That's correct.
And during the Vietnam War, many of the then 16-week Naval Hospital Corps school grads went directly to 8404 Field Medical Service School, FMSS, at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, or Camp Pendleton, California, for 4 weeks of field training before deployment with a Marine unit to South Vietnam, or to a Marine Corps unit in South Vietnam. What's the difference? A Marine unit or a Marine Corps unit?
Same.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And the colloquial form of address for a corpsman is Doc.
That's correct.
In the Marine Corps, this term is generally used as a sign of respect.
I was Doc Robbie.
Doc Robbie, okay.
Yeah. And I went to Camp Lejeune,
Okay.
and I was just looking at my service records this past week in preparation for this interview, and I saw that I graduated 50th out of 400 and some corpsmen that were training at Camp Lejeune.
So the top eighth.
I was a little disappointed. I thought I'd finished in the top 10. But I was a platoon leader down there, and I trained hard, and they had their job was to get us prepared for combat and get us prepared for the tough conditions that we were about to face in Vietnam, and get us in top shape. And
Do any memories stand out from that time?
no, except that it was extremely hot there at Camp Lejeune, and it was extremely hot in South Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
So-
Kind of acclimates you.
And I got in peak shape so that when I got over there, we marched day and night, lived in the jungle. We had to run for our lives many times, so being in shape was actually a must if you wanted to survive.
Life or death.
Yeah.
The U.S. Fleet Marine Forces are combined general and special purpose forces within the United States Navy that are designed in engaging offensive, amphibious, or expeditionary warfare and defensive maritime employment, a responsive force that can conduct ops in any spectrum of conflict around the globe. Were you expeditionary or amphibious? Do you know?
I don't really know. I think it was expeditionary.
Oh, okay.
which I think means I served on the ground.
And also, they fight away from established bases. You're kind of like in the middle of nowhere compared to people who get to hang out just on a base.
I was not on a base. I was almost entirely in the jungle of Vietnam.
Wow. And that was before the modern concept of rapid deployment forces. It's kind of
Correct.
like grew into that.
Mm.
You were essentially self-sustaining with an organic logistics capability and a full array of supporting arms.
Correct.
So you were always well supplied.
Well, you know, we were only supplied with what we could carry.
Oh, right.
So sometimes we would be supplied with 3 meals a day for 7 days, but you couldn't carry 21 C rations plus all your ammunition and your arms and my hospital kit and my 45 and flak jacket and everything else. So usually you would leave 14 meals and just take 7 meals and eat 1 meal a day.
Wow.
When you were in the jungle, it was impossible to carry 21 meals. It was just way too much weight. And plus 2 canteens of water.
Oh, right.
And sometimes we drank rice paddy water or whatever standing water we could find, and we had tablets to purify
Oh,
the
okay.
water that we would drop in the water.
Was that good enough, the tablets? I mean, did it clean the water enough?
Pretty gross.
Oh, it was gross. Yeah.
You know,
Because
quite a few
there's
guys
human
would
waste.
get occasional dysentery.
Right.
Yeah, but almost everybody in the jungle that fought in the jungle lost a lot of weight.
You had mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, a lot of weight immediately.
Were you told not to eat anything from the country?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, in
Because-
fact, occasionally we'd find, we'd go through an abandoned village and find pineapples that were growing or,
No, I meant like their prepared food, things like that. Or,
well, I was never in a...
oh, okay, in that kind of situation.
I was never in a town, usually.
Right.
We were usually deployed in jungle situations where, you know, we went through villages, but nobody ate anything from the village.
And Naval Fleet Marine Force personnel were usually corpsmen, religious program specialists, or naval gunfire liaison officers who participate in amphibious assaults. Eligible to get the Fleet Marine Force Combat Ops insignia to certain service medals and ribbons. Such Navy personnel are authorized to wear the Marine Corps utility uniform with Navy insignia and must conform to all physical requirements of the U.S. Marines. That pretty much is what you said earlier. You trained with the Marines, and so you conformed to their requirements, their physical
Yes.
requirements.
For all purposes, they considered me a Marine. And I have a couple of friends that are retired Marines, and they consider me a Marine, which is pretty nice. And they call me Doc, and they love their docs.
Mhm.
So I had a few friends that were corpsmen in Vietnam that didn't make it home. In fact, I think when I went to Vietnam, they said that 2 out of 3 corpsmen deployed. And I went over with 2 friends, and they said 2 out of 3 would usually not make it home. Or
You
either
knew that?
killed or wounded. I was the lucky one that made it home,
You knew that going in?
pretty much.
Wow. I read something really cool about that, sort of. Let's see. 20 naval ships have been named after hospital corpsmen.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And also, the rating of hospital corpsmen is the most decorated in the United States Navy, with 22 medals of honor, 174 Navy crosses, 31 Navy Distinguished Service Medals, 946 Silver Stars, 1,582 Bronze Star Medals with Combat V's for heroism.
Wow, there's only 1,500 Bronze Stars.
And that's you, right?
And that's me. One.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that rare.
Yeah. You've already described yourself as rare. Hey, 144 score, no one ever saw it.
I know.
All right, so you had some time off before you went to San Diego, right? You came home in between Lejeune and California? Did you come home?
I came home, visited my family, and
Said goodbye?
said our goodbyes, and
Did you have to make out a will?
yes. I left,
Did your mom know that?
no. I left 60% to my mother and 40% to my father. My father died at the age of 86, 2009. And my mom, God bless her, is going to be 92 and still going strong.
Good for her.
Her brain is still as sharp as a tack.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Please thank her for those letters, for remembering.
I will. And my mom found all the letters that I wrote her when I was in Vietnam. Would you like me to read a couple
Yes,
of
please.
excerpts?
Now that you mentioned yes.
I'll just read just a few lines from a few different letters. I'll skip all the sweet talk and get right to this paragraph. Yesterday I had another bitter taste of tragedy. One of the corpsmen that came over here with me, and whose name was Mike Thurkettle, and worked with me at Portsmouth Naval Hospital, was assigned to Alpha Company, and I was Delta Company. We were in the same battalion. He died in my arms. I fought desperately to save his life, but it was futile. I was too late. God, what a shame. He was such a great guy. War is really hell. I came quite close myself to being hit yesterday. I can't wait to get out of here. My nerves are shot to pieces. Well, it shouldn't be too long now, about 44 more days, but one day here at Cantien is an eternity. Hope everyone is healthy and doing fine at home, and hope to see you soon.
Was your mom your biggest confidant?
Yes, my mom wrote me often.
Or
and-
is your mom, I should say?
Yes, and she still is. She would write me quite often, and I would write her quite often. My brothers and sisters wrote me, and a couple of friends wrote. But it was sometimes very difficult to write. Being in the jungle, we were in times of monsoon, intense rain. Sometimes we were deployed for 7 days, 24 days in a jungle, fighting in different battles. Operation Tennessee, Operation Kentucky, Operation Medina, or a few that I can remember. I can't quite remember the others, but I know we had a very experienced outfit, and we had a very brave captain, and he was always volunteering our outfit to go out and save some other outfit that had been either overrun or ambushed or needed reinforcements. We were usually the reinforcements. We, in that one instance, we were sent to save Alpha Company that were pinned down with a 50 caliber machine gun. Another instance, it was Bravo Company that was overrun, and we were sent to save them. That one particular day, I threw 200 dead Marines on helicopters, and out of about 250 in their company, they lost 200, and we were sent to save those guys. It reminded me of a story. We were surrounded in this village by an NVA division of 5,000 or 6,000, they estimated, North Vietnamese Army, and it was Delta Company and whatever remnants were left from this other Bravo Company that we had gone out to save. And in the middle of the night, a Marine came up to in front of us and yelled out, "Don't shoot, I'm a Marine." And he was asked, what was Mickey Mantle's number, and he said 7, and what team did he play for, and he said the Yankees, and we said, what city were the Yankees, and he said New York City. We said, come on in.
Wow.
And he came running into our perimeter, and he said he had left a wounded comrade, a wounded Marine, out in the jungle, and this was the jungle where they were overrun. And the lieutenant, he said he needed somebody to go with him to try to get this Marine. So the lieutenant asked me if I wanted to go, and I said yes. And I said, I'll need 2 other guys to help carry him back. So we went out in the middle of the night, it was probably around midnight, out into the darkness to look for this wounded Marine. And we did find him. He was about maybe 500, 1,000 meters, a couple thousand meters away. And while I was tending to him before we lifted him up to carry him back to the base, there was the NVA Army was marching on a berm right above us. And in the moonlight, we could see all of their silhouettes. Hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of North Vietnamese soldiers. And we had to lie very quietly so that they didn't discover us.
Was the patient conscious?
Yes, the patient was conscious. We told him to be quiet. He was conscious, but he couldn't walk. And we took turns carrying him after that NVA outfit left. We took turns carrying him back to the base. And we were attacked tremendously by this North Vietnamese army while we were in this village. We had set up a perimeter, but we had Phantom jets dropping bombs all around us to keep these guys away, and we were actually gassed with tear gas and shot at, and human wave assaults, but we were able to fend off the enemy. And if it wasn't for our jet support, none of us would have survived. But the next morning the battle was ended. It lasted about a day, a night, and the next day. And we went out in the field and we actually had a body count of 1,500 NVA killed surrounding us, and they estimate there were 6,000 NVA. That was just 1 or 2 days in Vietnam.
Oh my gosh.
Every day was like pretty much a life or death situation.
Is that the story about what your friend Bill told me, that you lost most of your unit?
I lost most of my unit right after I left. Well, there was one battle in one of these letters I wrote to my mom where out of 40 of us, 35 were either killed or wounded, and they sent out replacements. So out of our 40-man platoon, there were 5 of us left, and the other 35 were not very experienced. So that left me as one of the more experienced guys, and actually had to read maps and call in artillery and call in medevac choppers until the new sergeant and the lieutenant got their bearings and learned the ropes. I was fighting in Hue City, outside of Hue City, in January of 1968. My discharge date, I think, was January 19th.
That was Tet Offensive, right?
That was the Tet Offensive, and my captain called my lieutenant and said, "You got to get Doc Robbie out of the jungle. He should have been out of harm's way 30 days ago."
Wow.
So we were fighting outside of in Quang Tri Province, outside of Con Thien. No, outside of Hue City.
Can you show me on the map?
And Dong Ha, we were outside of Dong Ha. Quang Tri is right here, right next to Dong Ha.
Is that by the DMZ?
That's correct. My last month was spent at Con Thien in the DMZ, right along the DMZ. But we cleared out Quang Tri to make a Quang Tri airstrip. And here's Hue City, is right below Quang Tri.
Oh, I see.
And we went down to Hue.
It's by Phu-Bai.
Correct. And we're actually on the perimeter of Hue City on an operation right before the Tet Offensive. And gave the order to get me out of the jungle. And the lieutenant said, "Doc, how are we going to get you to Quancre Airstrip?" And the chaplain said, "Well, I have a Jeep back in the village. If we can make it back to my Jeep, I'll drive Doc Robbie to Quancre Airstrip." So we made it back to his Jeep. He drove down, I think it was called Route 1. Route 1, right here. We drove from Route 1 around Way City, and we drove to Quancre Airstrip, and I was just with a chaplain and myself. And I still had my M16 and my .45, but of course the chaplain wasn't armed, being a chaplain. And on the way to the airstrip, I asked the chaplain where he was from, and he said he was from Ohio. And he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Well, I'm from a little town in Monmouth County, but probably the only big town you would know would be Asbury Park. I'm from near Asbury Park." He said, "I've never heard of Asbury Park, but I have a very good friend. In fact, my college roommate is a teacher at Manasquan High School." And that's where I had gone to high school. And the teacher that was his friend was Fred Lockemeyer, who was my phys ed teacher, and he was also my football, basketball, and baseball coach, and one of my dearest friends on the planet. And as a freshman, I was captain of all three of those teams. And so Fred Lockemeyer really respected and liked me, and I respected and liked him. So talk about a coincidence. In the middle of Vietnam, a chaplain was the roommate of my coach in high school.
I love that.
There's one other really highly coincidental thing that happened to me. We were riding shotgun on the back of a convoy, and I was in the and there had to be 50 or 100 trucks. I would say 50, at least 50 trucks. They were building, I think they were building the base around Puma, which is right up here. And they were building a base, and they were supplying this base with everything they needed. So they had 50 trucks loaded with everything that was needed to build a base in the middle of Vietnam. And I was in the last truck. There were dusty roads, bumpy roads, and of course I was covered in soot from head to toe from being in the last truck and all the trucks kicking up dirt and dust. And as the trucks pulled into this base that they were building, the MP was standing in front, and he was directing every truck off to the left. Every truck was going to the left. So the first truck was all the way down to the left. We're in the very last truck. And rather than going off to the left, he had us go next to the first truck. Where the first truck pulled in, and then every truck pulled next to that truck. But he directed us, instead of going all the way to the end of the line, to go next to the first truck. And I was sitting in the back of this, in an open truck, lying in the back of this truck, and I looked down, and driving the first truck was my cousin from Belmar, Gary Robbins. He's actually my cousin's cousin, but we grew up together, and we considered each other cousins.
Right.
And we hugged and greeted each other in the middle of Vietnam. He didn't know I was there. I didn't know he was there. And it was just, if I had pulled down next to the last truck, I would have never seen him. He would have never seen me. And we see each other at family functions, weddings, and other family functions, and we always remind each other that we met in the middle of Vietnam. So it's, quite a coincidental meeting.
That's really something.
Yep.
All right, so when you left San Diego, what was it, by air, by sea? How did you leave San Diego to go to Vietnam?
I left San Diego in a commercial airline with stewardesses, and we flew to Japan, commercial airline, Narita, Japan, right outside of Tokyo. And we spent a night in Tokyo, had a meal there, and flew out the next day to Okinawa. And from Okinawa, we got on a, I don't know what it was, just a small Air Force double prop that took about 7 or 8 hours, very uncomfortable flight to Da Nang, Vietnam.
Da Nang?
Da Nang, yes. I landed in Da Nang, spent my first night in a Quonset hut, which is just an open building with mosquito mesh around it. Slept on a little canvas bed, and next morning was directed to Delta Company. And he took me by jeep to Delta Company, which was outside of Da Nang, in a town, outside of a town called Hoi An, which is right here, just south of Da Nang. And I was assigned to Delta Company, 1st Platoon,
I'm sorry, how do you spell that town?
Hoi An, Hoi, capital A-N.
Okay. Sounds familiar.
And from there, we did many patrols, some along the South China Sea, some inland, but all around that area was heavily fortified BC. And
Viet Cong.
yes, and it was difficult because there were civilians. Really couldn't discern the civilians from the Viet Cong.
Right. What about the ARVN? Did you have ARVN with you, South Vietnam?
We
Troops.
always usually had a scout, an ARVN scout with us that could interpret. But another strange thing is I took French in high school, and Vietnam was occupied by the French for many years. So on many occasions, I was able to communicate with the Vietnamese by speaking French, rudimentary French, and they spoke rudimentary French, but we were able to communicate. It helped on a number of occasions to be able to ask
great.
questions, ask directions, or whatever.
Too bad they couldn't help carry your rations, things like that. You know?
Too bad they couldn't help what?
Carry your rations.
Oh, I know. Well, that was actually, we were in a base in Hoi An. Most of the time when we got transferred from Hoi An, we were deployed from Hoi An, and then we just went out in the jungle. We actually fought along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and our captain at one time told us that we were right on the border of Laos and Cambodia, and we were actually had crossed over the trail and were in those two countries slightly.
Uh-huh.
That would be right in this area. Well, the Ho Chi Minh Trail, I guess, came from North Vietnam all along the mountains here.
Okay.
Vietnam was mountainous, and I guess this is west. That must be east. All South China Sea,
Uh-huh.
which was quite beautiful if it wasn't for the circumstances.
Did you watch that show, China Beach, back in the 80s?
No.
Oh, I like that
I
show.
haven't watched very many Vietnam movies.
Oh, okay. I don't blame you.
Yeah.
What you described with the troops on the berm,
Oh,
the
yeah.
enemy troops, that I wanted to say it's like a movie
Oh, yeah.
where you have to be quiet.
You sure did.
Wow. So Hoi An, you would go out into the jungle from there.
Correct. We did patrols along the beach, a place called the Mud Flats that I can recall, and it was a pretty dangerous area.
Mm-hmm. Because it's pretty far north in South Vietnam compared to a lot of other troops were down near Saigon and
Right.
what about Chu Lai? That's where the headquarters was for your division. You never went there?
Never went there. Not that I know. Not that I can recall. Yeah, we pretty much, after Hoi An, we were pretty much deployed in the jungle, and we fought in different areas, different battles, helped try to save other outfits that were having trouble. We had many firefights, took many casualties. Quang Tri was in Dong Ha. We went up to Dong Ha, and we had to travel a little bit south and try to secure this area so they could build an airstrip. And it was what they call I-Corps, so they had cleared out there were no friendly Vietnamese. You know, whatever Vietnamese
Oh,
were
okay.
up in that area of I-Corps were not friendly.
So no civilians were being hurt
Correct.
by accident. That was the demilitarized zone. right?
Correct.
And the international agreement was that we don't go into the demilitarized zone, but so many Marines were getting hurt that Washington finally said, yes, you can go in there.
Yeah, I think my friend died in my arms in the DMZ.
Oh.
I think that was just north of Ca Thuyen.
Is that your friend Mike Durkettle?
Yes.
How do you spell Durkettle?
Thirkettle.
I had it right except for I had D-U-R, but it's T-H-I, okay. I'm sorry for your loss. Did you ever visit his family afterward? I don't know where he's from.
He's from Southern California. Can't think of the name of the town. His father sent me a beautiful letter, which I
nice.
tried like crazy to find. I think his father was a state senator and restored Austin Healey's, and sent me a beautiful letter in which he quoted Abraham Lincoln and philosophers, and it was just a brilliant letter, and said that I was the only person that actually told him the circumstances of his son's death, and he thanked me greatly for that.
You told him in a letter also?
I told him in a letter how his son died, and how proud he should be of him, and,
That's beautiful.
and that he, took his last breath in my arms, and I was sorry I couldn't save him. I often wanted to meet him. In fact, I tried a few years ago. My daughter went on Facebook and tried to find the Thurkettle family from Southern California, but the only name that we could find on Facebook was a woman up around Sacramento, and she didn't answer our Facebook request. So
Oh, okay.
I don't know about his family. I don't know if that was his sister or not. Maybe his parents are deceased by now.
Right.
Oh, he was quite an amazing guy. Raced quarter horses, was a rodeo champion, great athlete, handsome guy. It was a shame to lose a person like that.
Yes, absolutely.
Had great ambitions for himself, but he didn't make it. Lost another friend of mine. I don't know the circumstances of his death, but he and I served at Great Lakes, went to school together at Great Lakes, and his name was Ralph David Hale III, and he was from the Philadelphia area and went to the University of Pennsylvania, and he was suspended from school for a year for violating a rule. I think they found a bottle of Jack Daniels or something on his window ledge. And then he was actually going to be drafted, so he joined the Navy and actually wound up a corpsman. And as I was leaving Vietnam, I read his obituary in the Stars and Stripes magazine, Ralph David Hale III. So I went over with Ralph David Hale and Mike Thurkettle, and they both didn't make it home, and I did. And I consider myself to be very fortunate.
Absolutely. one of my Vietnam friends visited yesterday. I call them my friends, but my interviewees. And when I told him that you were coming, he said to tell you welcome home.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carol. I went to see the Vietnam Memorial only once, and it was very moving for me to see my two friends' names on that wall. It was actually too emotional. I try not to show too much emotion. I probably haven't. Probably cried only a couple times since Vietnam, actually. But that kind of really brought everything flashed back when I was at that wall, and that was an extremely emotional time for me.
It's like you felt their presence, like you were that
just,
kid again?
Just to think about them and...
The loss?
Yeah, and to be on that wall was pretty sad. I actually have a number of very, very good friends on that wall. One young man from Patterson died at the Tet Offensive outside of Way after I left. He was killed. He told me to give him a call. He was due to come home in March. He said, call me in March. I waited till April and called his house, and his wife told me, he was young and married, and his wife told me that he had been killed in the Tet Offensive. And his name was Corman November, with an R-E at the end instead of an E-R. And he was either from Passaic or Patterson, I can't remember. Great guy.
That reminds me, one of the other ones you said earlier was engaged. Was that Mike?
Mike Thurkel was engaged. Ralph David Hale III was a flirt.
A flirt?
A flirt. In fact, I have a picture of him that I found.
Oh.
I lost all my pictures from Vietnam in one of my moves. This is the ship I was on when I did that deployment to Viegas Island. This is actually Ralph David at Great Lakes going up to a girl and saying, I want to send a picture home to my family. And he chose a pretty little blonde and said, would you please have your picture taken with me? And she said, sure. Because he was quite handsome and had quite a way, quite a line. He was a lot of fun to be with. Now I can tell you one more story, Carol, if you have time.
You should write on the back while you still remember.
Yeah, Ralph David, and my memory's pretty good. We were waiting to get on a helicopter to go to battle. Mm-hmm. And a Jeep was riding down the road, and this young Marine was driving the Jeep, and the Jeep hit a landmine. And I rushed to his aid, and a lieutenant also rushed over with me, and we called a medevac chopper in right away. And this picture was a UPI picture, and it was on the front page of the Daily News. It was on the front page of the Asbury Park Press.
Whoa.
It was on the New York Times. And my father sent me the picture, and my mother sent me the picture to Vietnam. And my mother's handwriting is at the bottom. And she says, is this you? And I wrote, yep, Mom, it's me.
I saw that before, yeah.
Written across the bottom, yep, Mom, it's me. But I'm right here.
Oh.
I'm obscured in this picture.
That's something.
But if you want to see it, it's definitely me.
Okay. That's amazing, because I would have thought you were the medic or the main guy, but then when I first started filming this, I did zoom in on
the Marine
the obscure
has my
guy.
hand. And he said to me, are you going, he said to me, am I going to make it?
Oh, let me get that.
He has my hand.
Yes.
The wounded Marine is holding my hand. And he said, am I going to make it? And I said, you're going to be fine.
Oh.
He wasn't fine. He succumbed to his wound.
Yes. But of course, you always said that to them, right?
Sure. I had Sergeant West was a handsome sergeant from the South. I think he was from North Carolina or South Carolina. And we were on patrol one day, and Sergeant West, we were lined up on a railroad, an abandoned railroad trestle. I don't know where, I can't remember where. And across the field, maybe 1,000 or a couple thousand meters from us, a Viet Cong patrol was going across the field, and they were coming at us. So Sergeant West was telling everybody to be quiet and let them get closer because they were out of range. And we set up an ambush. And as Sergeant West was walking behind me, he tripped a grenade, a booby-trapped grenade, that exploded right behind him, so that he took all the shrapnel, most of the shrapnel, in his buttocks. He had his flak jacket up above that saved his torso. And, but the blast actually moved me, blew me, and the sound of this thing went off 10 feet from me, deafened me for days. In fact, gave me a ringing in the ears that I still have, which, while I'm awake and talking to people and around things and listening to air conditioners and heaters, and I don't hear. It's just when I lie asleep at night, I hear katydids and jungle noises, and that are deep in my ear. That it's a strange thing, but I mentioned it to one other Vietnam veteran, and he had a similar, he called it tree frog noise, and I said, yes, that's what it sounds like, tree frogs. And he had the same noise in his ears. But the first thing Sergeant West asked me when I turned around to tend to him was if his private parts were okay. And a lot of wounded guys were very concerned about, I guess, being able to have children. They wanted to make sure that their privates were intact.
Right.
And I said, your buttocks is pretty chewed up. I probably said ass, but everything else is okay. And he made it home okay.
Wow.
One of the first little encounters I had was at the mud flats. Two things. Our radio man's name was Kincaid, and we were in a little firefight, and we were taking sniper fire, and we dove into some tall grass, and I was behind a little berm, and he was on the other side in tall grass. And he yelled out to me, Doc, I think I'm hit. And I said, well, can you crawl over here to me? And I said, are you hit or are you not hit? He goes, well, I don't know. I think I am. I feel something trickling down my neck. And I said, well, crawl over here. He was only about 20 feet from me. And he said, I can't move. I said, all right, I'll be right there. I grabbed my corpsman kit and I jumped over the berm and while being shot at, and tended to him and pulled his radio off of him, and the bullet had gone in his back, ricocheted off his clavicle, and lodged behind his ear, so that the trickling down his neck that he felt was a bullet that actually went in behind his ear. And he said, am I going to be okay? And I said, yes, you're going to be okay. And I called in a medevac chopper and put him on a helicopter, and he has written me a couple of letters when I first got home, and he said, you were going to be okay, but I have a few problems, but, you know, I'm alive, and he thanked me for saving his life. But he said he was okay. After that, then somebody else was wounded in the back of the arm, and I think his name was Brady, and I called him, as I called a medevac chopper in, I guess it was a sniper shot, and it ricocheted off a little brick hooch that was there, the brick foundation of a hooch, and a piece of a bullet fragment or a piece of stone went straight into my bicep. And I saw a little hole in my bicep, but I just put a bandage around it and carried on with and put Brady in a helicopter. The whole back of his arm was ripped off.
Did you ever get the stone out?
No, no. Was in there for life.
Huh.
I never put myself in for a Purple Heart because my wounds were so superficial compared to
Right.
the deaths and the wounds that I saw. And I had a friend that had 2 or 3 Purple Hearts, and we called him the Cisco Kid. His name was Leo Casisio from Boston, Massachusetts. And he was a tough little Irishman. And Cisco Kid gave me one of his Purple Hearts and said, "Here, Doc, you earned this. You never got one officially, but I'm going to give you one of mine." That was lost with all my Vietnam pictures. I was married young when I got home and divorced, and all my memories stayed with my ex-wife, and somehow in her moves over the years she lost my things. So that's where most of my mementos are, but here are a few that I've been able to save over the years.
That's good.
So I had a few little things happen to me, but every day was I could probably sit here for 5 hours and tell stories. Actually, Carol.
Is there any one mission in particular that you haven't talked about that is pretty big for you?
Well, I'll tell you, my daughter went on the internet and looked up 1st Marine Division, my daughter Taylor. And actually she was sitting on the couch one day on her computer and she said, "Dad, what outfit were you in?" I said, "I was in the 1st Marine Division, 1st Battalion." And she said, "What year?" And I said, 67 to 68. And she said, "Come here, Dad, do you recognize any of these guys?"
Wow.
And she started pulling up pictures. And I said, "No, I don't know how, no, I don't." And I said, "Yes, I know that guy. That's Barry Gaston, and he was from Boston also." And then underneath it said Barry Gaston. So my memory is pretty good. And I said, "I'll tell you a story about Barry. Barry and I were being shot at by a sniper south of Contiana on patrol. And I told him to keep his head down, and he poked his head up. I guess he was curious, and a shot rang out, and he said, "Oh, I'm hit, Doc, I'm hit in the eye. I lost my eye." And I said, "Give me your hand." And I had a compression bandage, and I put a bandage over his eye. And he said, "Did I lose my eye? Did I lose my eye?" And I said, "Wait a minute, Barry." He says, "I think I'm blind in that eye." I said, "Wait a minute, Barry." I pulled the bandage down when the bleeding ceased a little bit, and the bullet, he's the luckiest guy on the planet, because the bullet creased the corner of his eye and creased the top of his nose, and they're the 2 areas that were bleeding, but it did not touch his eyeball.
Oh.
He was saved.
Wow.
But I put a patch over his eye and called a medevac, and that's the last I saw of Barry, until my daughter showed me this picture. And here was Barry standing in Vietnam in full uniform. And then there were other pictures. There was a picture of my outfit. My lieutenant took a picture to send home to his wife. And my lieutenant was one of the most heroic guys, and his name was Steve Lampo. And he was a tight end for the University of Missouri, and he was a lawyer, and he was an aide to Senator Stuart Symington, who was a senator from Missouri. And he was a great guy.
How do you know all this?
Fearless. I lived with him for a year in Vietnam.
No, I mean, how do you know everything that happened afterward?
That was before.
Oh, that was before.
That was before he went to Vietnam. I don't know what happened to him afterwards. I haven't seen him. I've been trying to find him. I tried to find him on Facebook. I tried to find him. Taylor tried to look up his name to see where he is. His name is Steve Lampo, Lampo. And Steve would jump up in the middle of a battle with no helmet on, with his .45 drawn. He was fearless. He was wounded a couple times.
So did Taylor find any other pictures?
Taylor found a picture that he took of our whole platoon, and it said, "Merry Christmas, greetings from Vietnam," on the picture.
That's
I
incredible.
have it on my phone, actually.
So, there were only 40 guys in your platoon, right?
Correct. On one instance, 35 guys were wounded or killed.
But it's amazing that such a small unit would be there when she typed in Marine Division.
There's a picture of me in Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
And that's a picture that I don't have. That's somebody posted on the 1st Marine Division wall.
Oh, you found a picture of yourself.
On the internet, there's a picture of me. It says, "Here's Doc Robbie striking a pose." That was the caption under the picture that somebody sent in.
Nice.
There's another one. Here's the picture of our platoon. Taylor circled me,
Oh,
and it says, "Greetings from Vietnam. Merry Christmas from Vietnam."
you look so young. I would have never known that's you. You all look young, though. You were boys.
We're 20 years old. There was one
Yeah.
kid 17 or 18.
Hmm. Yeah, Navy, you could be pretty young if your mom signed.
Here's the Merry Christmas from Vietnam. 1967.
Did you get better food for Christmas? Or no?
Probably not. Maybe. I have a friend that I went to high school with, and we actually were roommates at Rutgers our freshman year. Pete Romaine, and he went in the Army, and he went to Vietnam. And he came back and he graduated from the University of New Hampshire. And he went on to get his PhD in psychology. And his specialty became post-traumatic stress syndrome, which he suffered from. But he had 8 psychiatrists and psychologists working under him, and he was a specialist in post-traumatic stress. And his name is Peter Romaine.
And he works where?
He's in New Hampshire. He's now retired. But we reconnected at our 50th high school reunion
Oh, okay.
2 years ago. And
Oh.
we've been in touch, pretty much ever since, and shared Vietnam stories. And he told me to go to the VA, but I've never been to the VA. I came back and entered civilian life and divorced myself from the military and tried to suppress everything and put it all behind me and not think about it. But since Colts Neck honored me in a parade for veterans, and New Jersey gave me that Distinguished Service Medal for my heroism in Vietnam, and I've become more involved in service-related things, the VFW, American Legion, and that kind of thing. So, I'm proud of my service. I don't want to suppress it any longer.
Great.
That's why I'm here, and I like telling my story.
You seem very well adjusted compared to the last guy who sat in that chair from Vietnam and
Oh,
goes to
really?
a support group every week.
Like I said, I've been able to suppress a lot of things. It's only when the lights go out, you can't suppress it.
Do you still hear them say, "Doc, I'm hit"?
Not so much. Not so much. What I do see is the poor guys that were hit so badly that they were killed immediately or died without ever saying anything. The guys that were hit and I was able to save, I was grateful I was able to help them, and hopefully they get on with their lives. And I don't think about that. I think about all the poor young guys that never got a chance to live their lives out. So I've really tried to live my life to its fullest, in honor of a lot of those guys.
Exactly.
You know, some of the stuff maybe I wouldn't have done if it wasn't for, maybe Mike or
Right.
Ralph Davis behind me pushing me, go ahead, go for it, do it. Do everything you can.
Right.
So, Carol, that's my story. I don't know if you have any
Okay,
other
John.
questions.
Before I film the things that you have here on the table, let me just say I'm honored and humbled that you came here today to speak to me of your sacrifice and contribution that you made in service to the country. Thank you. God bless you. Welcome home.
Thanks, Carol.
Thanks, John.
It's great to be home. I have a wonderful family, brothers and sisters, 3 beautiful children, 4 gorgeous grandchildren,
Wow.
and I still have a mother.
Yes.
Life is beautiful.
Thanks to your mom for those letters. Very special.
Yeah. Thanks, Carol.
Go ahead.
Carol, I forgot to mention 2 things that I think are very important. 2 recollections that I just had that I didn't mention before. There was a young Corporal Langley that he was from the Louisiana Bayou, actually spoke French. In one of his last patrols before he was due to go home, we went out on a listening post, which was a 5-man patrol, and we were supposed to go out about, 5 to 10,000 meters from this base outside of Hoi An. Corporal Langley asked us if we minded if he cut short the mission somewhat, because he only had a few days left in Vietnam. And I said, well, it's up to him. He was in charge of this particular mission. So instead of going, I'm going to say, 10,000 meters, he only went 5,000 meters out into the jungle. And we had to cross this small river, and on the other side of the river, we just set up a little listening post, a little camp. And the mosquitoes were so intense, we had to put towels over our head to keep them from attacking us. Even though we had mosquito repellent, they were intense. But we were in the wrong place. So because we were in the wrong place, the base, which we didn't realize that night, sent out what they call H&I. That's hit and interdiction mortar shells, mortar rounds. I guess they were trying to maybe just luckily hit the enemy at some point. But these mortar rounds were coming in on us. And Corporal Langley jumped up and said, let's get out of here. And as we were running, a shell was coming down toward us, and you could really tell it was getting closer and closer with that whistling sound. It was coming right towards our heads, and we both dove. And we were about 10 yards apart. And this mortar landed exactly between us. And thank God for us, it was a dud. We both looked at each other and saw the fins of the mortar sticking out of the ground. Got our gear together, and we went to the area where we were supposed to be so we wouldn't take any more incoming mortar shells. Mm-hmm. And Corporal Langley did make it home safe and sound without being killed or wounded. Wow. And he was a great guy. That was one incident that I thought was worth mentioning. Another occasion that I had, and I didn't realize I had written my mother about this, but I told the story to my wife, and I've told it to a number of friends. I told her that I told her I've only had 3 undisturbed nights sleep this month. And I said about my injury, I was on an operation, the same one that 2 companies got wiped out on. Taking a wounded Marine to a helicopter, and I was waiting for it to land, and standing in the landing zone that we had cleared in the brush when the chopper was shot down right over me. I had to run like heck so it wouldn't fall on my head. When it hit the ground, a piece of the propeller, which was still spinning, hit me in the forehead. It knocked me out momentarily and gave me a few bumps. Oh, gave me a lump. I went to the hospital to see if I had a fractured skull, and I ran a high fever for 5 days. I had no fracture, but a slight concussion. I'm fine now, and there's not even a scar left on my forehead, so no need to worry.
Oh,
And I told her I was put up for a Bronze Star. I don't know if I told you, for running out to patch up a buddy in the open. They're shipping us up to the DMZ in a few days. I thought it was bad here. It's supposed to be 10 times worse up there. Glad to hear the kids and all are doing fine. Soon it will be my sister's birthday, then Jamie's, then Christmas, and then I'll be home. Probably around the beginning of January.
since you mentioned the Bronze Star, I think we should read this.
I
I think we should read this.
Will you read this on film?
Yes. please.
Okay.
Is that the same thing?
This is the actual
Citation.
Bronze Star. I want to take a look at that, and then I'll read the citation.
Okay. I'll just hold it. August 14th, 68. Heroic achievement in Vietnam on November 26, 1967.
Are we on?
Yes.
Carol, this is a letter that I got from the President after I got home. It says, "The President of the United States takes pleasure in presenting the Bronze Star Medal to Hospital Corpsman 3rd Class John Allen Robinson, United States Naval Reserve, for service as set forth in the following citation. For heroic achievement in connection with operation against the enemy in the Republic of Vietnam while serving as a corpsman with Company D, 1st Battalion, 1st Marines, 1st Marine Division. On 26 November 1967, when an adjacent company was ambushed near Con Thien in Quang Tri Province and sustained numerous casualties, Petty Officer Robinson ignored the danger from hostile fire as he unhesitatingly ran to the point of contact and began administering first aid to the injured men. When informed that a seriously wounded Marine was lying in a forward area, he completely disregarded his own safety as he ran across several fire-swept rice paddies and to reach the fallen Marine. Undaunted by the intense enemy fire, Robinson placed his body as a shield between the casualty and the severely injured Marine between the casualty and the enemy positions, and calmly administered medical treatment to the severely injured Marine until the man succumbed to his wounds. He then carried the Marine back across the hazardous area to a friendly position. Throughout the remainder of the engagement, he continued to display exceptional valor as he repeatedly exposed himself to the hostile fire as he moved throughout the battle area to encourage, comfort, and treat the wounded. Due largely to his prompt and courageous actions, he undoubtedly saved the lives of several Marines and was an inspiration to all who observed him. Petty Officer Robinson's bold initiative, superior professional skill, and selfless devotion to duty at great personal risk were in keeping with the highest traditions of the Marine Corps and of the United States Naval Service. Hospital Corpsman 3rd Class Robinson is authorized to wear the Combat V for the President, Major General F.C. Tharon, U.S. Marine Corps. Acting Commander, Fleet Marine Force, Pacific. Hey, Billy.
Hey, John.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Carol.
That's great.
Fried ham.
Wow.
Ew, turkey loaf.
Yeah.
Do you want to comment on any of these items that you ate? Any of these menus? beef steak. Was that good? There was no Spam, huh?
Everything was edible, nothing was good.
Well, which was the one you had to add hot sauce to?
Almost everything. We all lost 50 pounds, what does that tell you?
The lima beans. You had to add
Ham and
extra
lima
to
beans,
the
that
lima
was pretty
beans.
good.
And which was the, oh, you liked it?
Yeah, that was.
And which was the favorite?
Ham and eggs, I think.
What about fruit cocktail?
The fruit cocktail was good, too.
Yeah.
Remember that little pound cake?
It kept us alive. That's all. Here's a buddy at Great Lakes, Billy, that was killed in Vietnam.
Yeah, I brought some pictures I brought too, unfortunately.
I don't have, Linda lost all my pictures.
Oh, my God.
Well, I had a whole album.
Oh,
Linda Muller lost it. A young guy bought a new camera. He said, "You want to buy my camera?" This is a black and white manual camera. And I said, "Well, that's a funny thing. I had just taken a camera course back home." So I was pretty familiar with the f-stop.
Yeah,
and
sure.
And the time. And I said, "Yeah, I'll buy your camera. How much do you want?" It was a beautiful Konica black and white 35 millimeter camera.
I like that.
So he said $35. I said, "All right, well, I don't have any money. I don't have anything on me. I'll pay you next payday." And he said, "Okay." And the next week, he was killed.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, no.
I never got a chance to pay for the camera.
Yeah, that's tough.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Is that Great Lakes?
That was actually on that ship.
Oh, okay. To Puerto Rico.
Mhm.
You're right.
That's at Great Lakes. That's at Great Lakes.
Oh, okay. And is this the uniform that you put on to get your Bronze Star pinned on?
Yes.
Okay. This is the island, Viegas?
That's that little island that we attacked. Fake attack. That was the ship I was on for 20 days. Actually, I had 10 days or 7 days free time in San Juan.
Sweet.
That was so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
What, R&R?
Yeah.
No, we went to San Juan. That's my father was stationed in Juan. Did you see where the cannons are and
Oh,
stuff?
it's beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful little city.
yeah,
We went to Old San Juan, to all the bars and nightclubs and saw shows.
I went to Hawaii, met Carolyn there, or with Carolyn, I forget how I did it. We wound up there somehow.
I had another operation I was on in Vietnam,
No.
off the coast of Vietnam.
No.
We attacked an island. And we were in these tanks and these amphibious things.
Yeah.
And on the way to this operation, we're sitting on top of a tank. The guy next to me has an accidental discharge and shoots the guy in the head next.
Yeah.
On that side, the guy's killed instantly.
Yeah.
There were a lot of accidental
Oh, yeah.
discharges.
Oh, yeah.
This is on the way. Now we
Yeah.
get to this river, this huge river, and on the other side there's an island. We cross the island and we cross the river in an amphibious craft. And the fronts go down,
Yeah.
all the guys run out. The tanks were able to actually,
Keep going.
they were amphibious tanks that
Yeah.
came across.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we had tanks, we had all the guys, we dug in on the beach, we were taking sniper fire from the trees. We had this kid from Kentucky jump up off the sand because we had so many guys wounded. And I think that's that operation I told my mother, 35 guys were wounded.
Yeah.
This guy jumps up and plucks 2 guys out of the trees, 2 snipers out of the trees. And we were on this island.
Willie Murphy
It was
style.
all Viet Cong. We gathered up every woman, child, water buffalo,
Yeah.
chicken, pig. Oh, that was a hell of a, it was like Normandy Beach, getting off the beach and
Sure.
storming up the beach, and we had a lot of casualties. In fact, one guy got captured by the Viet Cong and tortured. And we found him in they've had this little pool of water at the corner of the rice paddy where they got their drinking water.
Yeah.
The next day we found him floating in the pool. He was tortured and killed. That island was treacherous.
What was the name of it?
I don't know the name of the island. I can't remember the name of the operation, but we did an amphibious assault on a beach. That's why I want to reach Lieutenant Lampo.
Yeah, he'll know.
Somehow I want to reach the guys in my outfit, or the Cisco Kid, or some of these guys that talk about some of these unbelievable things we did. I got a Bronze Star for this, but there were other things that I did that were twice that. Twice that, believe me. Twice as dangerous. So that was one instance. All these things, when I'm doing this interview, all these things now.
Oh, yeah.
Flashing back that
Yeah.
I've repressed all these years.
Yeah, I know, I had the same thing happen.
So this is Bill Wallace.
Hi, folks.
Bill, do you want to say why you recommended John Robinson for this
Well, I think
interview?
anybody that listens to the tape, I didn't hear what was said except the very end, but there's no question that John is a great American. He's one of my lifelong friends. You know, I was here previously, of course. You know, I served in Vietnam, as you know, with the 101st Airborne, 2nd and 327th Infantry, and seeing this program and just seeing how great this program is. John Robinson, who's a lifelong friend of mine and definitely a war hero for many reasons besides why he got that award. There's not a better American in the country than John Robinson, which should be evident to anybody that just speaks with him at any time.
Very well said. Thank you, Bill.
I don't know, some rough candidates out there, some rough choices we have to make.
This is a good year to run.
There's only 1,500 of these Bronze Stars with the Combat V,
Really?
Carol was telling me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did the
That's a
research.
unique group. And like you said, he probably did many other things would deserve it more. It was